The problem that MSPs carry, especially today, is the risk that they are holding. The cyber risk is becoming more and more prevalent, and the buck stops with them if they haven't got the right terms in place to protect their business, if they haven't got the right products in place, if they haven't advised their client or their client hasn't accepted their advice on what they need to do. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the community now as to where their responsibilities start and stop. I think there's risk on not just cyber, but losing data or just poor performance and people wanting to sue them because they've lost revenue.
Scale Up, the podcast for driving growth in your MSP, delivered by industry experts.
Welcome back to the Scale Up podcast. Today, we're going to talk about how safe you think you are with your business and your asset. We're joined today, Kim Simmonds from Law 365 and Cloud Contracts 365.
Dan.
Tell the audience a little bit about yourself, for those that don't know you.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for inviting me along. This is a fantastic studio. I absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Okay, so background is I've been a lawyer for MSPs for 20 years. And through that journey, I set up a law firm called Law 365, which is for MSPs, Microsoft partners, ISVs, SaaS businesses. So it kind of does a broad range of the tech industry. And we tend to work with the mid-tier to enterprise kind of level. But along the way, I wanted to really support my SMB MSPs. And I thought, what is it that I could create and automate within the law firm with the lawyers that we have that will enable MSPs to get their contract needs, so their templates, their reviews, their compliance in a platform, and that's Cloud Contracts 365, and that was how Cloud Contracts was born out of that. So that's kind of
that's allowed you to price it at that level.
Yeah, exactly. It's a subscription price. It's a low monthly fee over 12 months, but it's fantastic. It has all the contract templates that they need, all the NCE terms, AI terms, like everything that they need to fundamentally comply with legislation.
So now you're like me, you just live your life on the road.
I do.
Go to events.
I quite like it though.
You like it?
I do.
See, I've got a weird journey that I actually worked in MSP as a tech, worked my way up, and then actually moved into management because I was fed up of traveling.
Right, okay.
So I was fed up of waking up in a purple room, wondering which tone I'm in.
After terrible night's sleep, with a terrible pillow that's like a rock.
Yeah, and going to a data center or going to a customer doing on-prem infrastructure. So I moved into management because I was actually fed up of traveling.
Yeah.
And now I travel way more than I've ever done.
It's so funny. I enjoy the overseas travel because then I get to sort of explore different countries. I quite like that. So we're going to Utah this year for PAX 8 and Copenhagen. And I think that's the more exciting part of the traveling. But
But I tend to do it badly because I don't tag on any days or anything.
Right.
So I may as well be around the corner. So I go in on a plane and I come back out again. So I don't see a lot of that value. Yeah. So when you thought about your journey then from being a law practice only to now building a SaaS platform, what's that look like for you? That must be completely different.
Totally different. I mean, running a professional services firm like a law firm requires different skill sets. It's a people-led business. So you're very much, you're as quick as your people. But a SaaS business, you have to understand the tech world, which I understand it from a legal positioning, but I'm not a techie. Yeah. So I've had to really learn the hard way. Like, what does this mean? Surround myself with people who understand tech much better than I do. I remember the proof of concept we did 4 years ago. And I was working with data scientists. This is before LLMs were a thing, large language models. Before ChatGPT came out. Yeah, exactly. I was doing machine learning, NER, NLP. And we sort of built this proof of concept, which was basically reading a non-disclosure agreement, a confidentiality agreement. And my whole thing is, can it read it as well as the lawyer? Can it flag the risk as well as the lawyer can flag it automatically within a few seconds? And we managed to do that. We then went to Innovate UK, which is government funding, and we successfully won funding of £500,000 to build the platform as it is today. So they obviously thought MSPs are really vital to the economy, otherwise they wouldn't have funded us, and they understand how important contracts are for these guys to protect their risk, and I think that's obviously what I'm here for.
Yeah, and you can see that change in the government and compliance there, because they're obviously seeing that actually the biggest amount of businesses in the UK, for instance, are SMEs.
Yes.
And so
99% apparently.
they are being managed and supported by MSPs.
Exactly.
So if that's not being done right, what's the risk?
Exactly. And when the tech fails, when there isn't that good quality support, when cyber becomes the thing, 99% of your UK economy can go quite wrong.
Yeah.
So they understand the importance of that, and that's why we were successful in winning it. And now it's a fantastic platform that MSPs use on a daily basis, and it's brilliant.
So I would imagine there's some people in the audience that are thinking what I get told quite a lot when we're looking at their PSAs and their structure and their business operating system, and we're identifying actually they don't really know what services they sell, onboard, deliver, and invoice. And so there's no structure there in the agreements and contracts, and there's definitely no documentation to back that up.
Yeah.
They turn around to me and say, yeah, but Darren, I don't need this asset to be worth something, or I'm not ready to sell it yet.
Right.
So contracts aren't important to me. Like we stand by our services.
Yeah.
We stand by the fact that we're good at delivering to our customers.
Yeah. And I've also had, they're fine with a 30-day rolling term because if the customers love them, they'll stay. And we want to be partners to our customers. And if they don't like the service, they should be let go out of the recurring revenue model. I've heard both sides of that. I think I understand it. I understand where they're coming from. For them, they want to deliver great tech. They want to deliver a great service, and that's what they're really focused on. The problem that MSPs carry, especially today, is the risk that they are holding. The cyber risk is becoming more and more prevalent, and the buck stops with them if they haven't got the right terms in place to protect their business, if they haven't got the right products in place, if they haven't advised their client or their client hasn't accepted their advice on what they need to do. There's a lot of misunderstanding in the community now as to where their responsibilities start and stop. I think there's risk on not just cyber, but losing data or just poor performance and people wanting to sue them because they've lost revenue from the poor performance. If someone's, maintaining a membership website and that website goes down for 3 days and the client's like, I've lost £1 million of revenue, where is the contract to say that that MSP is not liable for that, it's not responsible for that? So
they're going to go straight for negligence.
Yeah, exactly.
And say, you haven't got anything,
claim.
so...
Exactly. And then spin that another way. And these MSPs are not thinking about the compliance. Where is their insurance policies? I know we're going to touch upon that a little bit later, which I think is really critical to talk about. What is insurance? How much should you carry? What kind of insurance should you carry? Why is that important? But, you look at the grand scheme of things and it's not, you can't bury your head in the sand anymore, Darren. You just can't.
Yeah. And as a director and shareholder of the business, it stops with you. And I don't think people do that enough. They don't take these hats off and say, I'm no longer the operations guy or I'm no longer the techie. I'm actually a director and shareholder. And by law, I have to follow these principles.
Exactly. And there's this thing called piercing the corporate veil at law, which basically means that, when you have a limited liability company, essentially you're protected to some degree, that your limit is the company. So if it goes bust, you're not personally held liable for it.
Yeah.
But there's a principle at law that says you will be personally liable as a director of a company if you're found to be grossly negligent, which means you've done something really bad, and that actually the law will come after, the courts will come after you. So, you can't hide your head in the sand anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I also see different contracts happening within an MSP. And I probably sit on the fence myself because I probably don't know it enough to actually say which way is the best. So we see where people have single contracts for every service.
Yep.
I see it where there's a master contract, but they bolt in child contracts when they sell a different service.
Yes.
And I see it where you've got one contract that's for everything, even if they only take one service today.
Yep.
What's the best model?
Yes, and I've seen all of that as well. The best model, and obviously I have to caveat this because sometimes there are different models for different types and sizes of MSPs, but the best model is what I call the master service agreement, which is a framework agreement. It's a one-stop shop contract. And essentially there's two things MSPs have to consider. There's the legal contract, and then there's the other contract, which is like the SOW, the statement of work. It's where they might, or an order form, it's where they actually specify what the customer's actually buying. So it's not the legal framework of, if this goes wrong, this is how we handle it. That's the MSA. That's what the MSA does, the Master Service Agreement. But the SOW, or the order form, will specify to the customer what they're actually buying. Now, let's look at the Master Service Agreement, right? It's a framework agreement. It's a one big agreement. It has all the general terms up front, and then the schedules will tackle each of the types of services that you're delivering. It should have a managed service section. It should have a professional services section. It should have a goods section for hardware, whether it's hardware as a service or sale of goods, sale of hardware, a cyber section, telephony, connectivity. Some of them have print managed, because obviously, they might be doing that. Yeah. And what else? There's lots of, whatever the services are. But the way you contract with a customer is very simply that you should be sending them one agreement for their lifetime with you. Now, what I mean by that is, if you send the MSA when you're onboarding a new client, you never have to send another legal contract to them ever, because it's an evergreen contract. It automatically renews every single year or every 36 months. But what you send to them when they start to buy services from you is an order form, which again specifies each of the services. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah.
I haven't lost you on that one.
So a salesperson would send an order form, get acceptance to that order form, and then send
they can do it that way. And either they can send the MSA and get it signed as a document, or they can link the terms of the MSA in the order form, so it's nice and smooth. Once the client signs the order form, they've effectively agreed. They have to use some legal language in there, but they have agreed to the terms of the MSA that's linked. So there's different ways. And if you're using a PSA and you're putting a quotation through the PSA, you might want to just link the MSA terms in there. But you can just do it once and for all as well.
But then in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, but this customer has IT support and professional services, but in this MSA, we've got backup conditions and what we're liable to if we can't restore data. We don't even provide that service to them today. But now they start asking me questions about it because they won't sign the document because it's got something in that they don't agree to.
Yes, and my classic argument back is, if it's not relevant, you can ignore it. It's not going to be relevant to the customer. But it's better to have something in place should they then want to go and purchase that backup service later on. You don't have to recontract and think about they need that contract now.
Yeah.
And the problem
that's the biggest thing that happens. A salesperson sends something out and they don't send the second T's and C's.
But they don't also, if there's another salesperson that comes in, or you've lost an employee and someone else is coming in, no one's going to remember that they've got to send a new contract at the point that they bought backup. So it's much easier to have a conversation with your customer if they have that concern and say, if it's sitting there and you're not using it, it has no relevance to you. Keep it there, so that in the event that you do need it, it will show you where the terms are. That's the easiest way of dealing with it.
And you touched on another thing a minute ago that I wanted to come back to, about a link to a MSA. Mm-hmm. Again, what's the pros and negatives, or is there any pros and negatives to a link to a website? Always feels to me, when I get that done to me, that there's going to be some underhanding going on. I.e., I sign this document to that website, but then in a month's time that website changes and I don't know it's changed. But I have no copy of that website. Yeah,
and it depends on how you deal with it. Obviously, like if you look at Apple, Microsoft terms, right, they'll just keep the version control, but they'll say, you agree to these terms as updated, maybe updated from time to time. The law states that you can do that so long as you're not changing anything that materially affects the client. So let me give you an example, and then I can go into like why this is good or not good. Yeah. But if you have a master service agreement on your website, and then tomorrow you change a limit of liability, which just means the risk that you hold, the cap of your risk is kind of the heartbeat of the contract, where you manage your risk. And you go from 100% cap, which means that you won't give the client more than 100% of their charges in the 12 months before they claim. You change that to 50%. So you're now not on the hook for 100% back, but you're on the hook for only 50%. The law would consider that a material change because that really affects the bargaining position of the two companies, the client and the MSP. Yeah. So you can't go and do that. But if it was like a small update to the clause that said, I don't know, we're going to give you 30 days notice to change our operating environment rather than 15 days, then it's not a big deal. And it's also how you communicate the changes to your customers. So it's that trust element. You have to think not just from a legal position, but how do I build trust with our customers? If you're changing terms all the time, they're going to feel like they can't trust you.
Yeah.
Can you put a letter out to them to say, we've updated the terms, these are the main changes. Let us know if you have any concerns. Things like that. Let's go back to pros and cons of online terms. And I do deviate quite a lot, as you might have noticed.
I'm
trying to catch up.
I
know. Sorry about that. But so pros and cons of online. So when we say online, we just mean you've got your online terms. Could be hosted on your website, for example, and you're going to link that into your proposal or into your order form or into your quotation or wherever, right? A document that the customer knows they're buying 3 licensing, whatever it might be.
And it references it and they sign it.
And it references it and they sign it and everything's agreed. Now, every time you do a new order, most times you will have that link stayed in there. And it's not a problem, but you're always showing them the contract every single time. So the cons of that is if you then have a change of personnel from the client side and they're like, what's this link? They've been signing it without even opening up the link and they've been approving it. And then someone opens up the link, then obviously you've got a problem because you've been supporting them with the old terms all the way through. And now they want to negotiate something halfway through your business relationship, right? Yeah. So it can be a visibility issue. It's not a bad thing. It's just that can happen. But obviously the pros about that is that most people don't open up links.
No. Most of them don't read the T's and C's, never mind open the links.
So, I have seen like a 90% conversion rate of like accepting terms because they have the link there, they sign it, they want to do business, and they can't, like the customers can't go back to the MSP and say, oh, I didn't read the terms. It's like, unfortunately, you can't at law. It doesn't matter. That's your responsibility. You're a grown up in a business, So those are kind of the pros and cons. I think the pros of just sending an agreement with a signature, like an actual signature, even an electronic one, what we call a paper version. So it's not online, it's not hosted anywhere. And by the way, my platform does that. You can send a contract straight out to get signed, or you can link it to your proposal. You can do either one of them.
Yeah.
But the one that you just get signed and it's the agreement you sign off, you then don't need to link anything for future orders. They know that every single order you ever do is subject to that main agreement. So to be honest, it's semantics. So it doesn't matter. It's just what's easier to do business and how do your customers like, and how do they respond to both? If you get the whole thing signed off, it looks like DocuSign, you know how that gets presented.
Yeah, it wraps it all up.
It wraps it all up. People might just automatically sign it, but then they can also see the contract. They might scroll up and go, right, I need to read this contract. It's long. So that's the pros and cons really of it. Does that make sense? Is that clear?
Yeah.
Okay.
The bit for me is the fact that I think you could change that website and not tell me.
You need to keep version control.
Right.
I think that's one of the critical takeaways. If you're going to change, have your version control, and when you link it, make sure it links with the version control. So you can keep your versions in there, and they'll know it's version 1.1 that they're under. And of course, if you then need to give them the version 1.2, it will have to be in the next order form that they, when you submit another order form.
Yeah, but you don't have to signpost that.
You don't have to, unless it's a material change, unless it's something so significant that it changes what we call the bargaining power.
Yeah. Then you should be doing that at the time of change.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
What's your take on the digital signature versus a signature that's padlocked?
Yeah, wet signature. Yeah, electronic signature all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fast, it's efficient. Most people don't read the contract. You need to have a contract that protects the MSP. And we'll talk about why, because we've got NCSC guidelines, we've got cyber resilience bill, we've got lots of things going on right now for MSPs that they've got to be aware of. and you don't want to have to negotiate contracts because that could take time, resource, money to do that. So that's what if that's where you were thinking about.
I was more thinking
of doing business.
Not Adobe Acrobat. You can get products that are very sign and things like that, or do you just get an electric signature? Does it matter that it's got that padlock to it?
Oh, I mean, put it through a proper electronic signature platform. That we use Sign Now in our platform. That's all verified signatures, and it has all the kind of code at the end, which it shows the stamp of when it was signed and everything. So do it that way, but you don't need to go more than that.
So you just talked about some governance that's coming through and big changes that are happening, and everyone's talking about the bills that are going through Parliament. How's this going to affect the MSP, do you think?
I think MSPs now are about to see more regulation than they've ever historically seen. I think this is coming at a time of AI, where AI is being more and more used in companies, and there's a risk of security around the AI tools that they're using.
And what type of data people are putting into those models. What type of data
and what AI tool it is, because, Copilot, fine, we kind of can sanction Copilot, but what if they want to bring in, I don't know, other AI tools that, they're processing data in China. So we're in the advent of all of that. Put that in the mix with cyber risk. And now we've got the Cyber Resilience Bill being passed through Parliament, which talks about the MSP's operational needs to basically look and advocate for where the risk could lie in their business operations and processes. And they have to notify the regulators within, I think, 24 or 48 hours from a cyber incident. And then couple that with the NCSC guidelines, so the National Security Guidelines, which is now advocating to all customers of MSPs that you need to have these terms in your contracts with MSPs. It's now no longer a case of MSPs not having contracts or, having poorly written contracts. Customers who are worried about this stuff and reading these guidelines will say, hey, MSP, where is your end of life support terms? And the MSP might be like, what? Like end of life? Why am I having to put that in? But they are being recommended to do that. They're being recommended to put, insurance amounts in, liability caps. I mean, I won't bore you with what that means, but these are all really high risk issues for an MSP, and it's managing their risk in it. So this is all kind of now in the last 12 months coming together, and it's a perfect storm of issues coming down the line for any MSP that's not prepared. It's a perfect storm.
So what does prepared look like, do you think? So
prepared is, firstly, let's look at, there's different layers, right? There's the legal layer, which is obviously why I'm here. So the legal layer is get your contract. Please just don't go to any lawyer out there. They have no idea about NCE. They have no idea about what AI terms and how using Copilot. They have no idea if you want to build agents, what that actually means from an IP position. Do not use general lawyers. They just do not know this world. So use a specific lawyer to put your contract terms in place. Obviously, we do that. Cloud Contracts does that automatically, and it's all in 25 seconds later, you got the contract, right? So that's the first layer. And protecting them with that is going to do 50% of the lift, right? The second one is looking at your insurance levels and looking at what insurance you have. So with all of this comes the risk of things happening. So if things happen, there's only two ways it's going to go. And let's say you're responsible for it. Either you're going to pay out of your pocket, right, the customer, or you're going to go and ask your insurance. You're going to knock on the door to your insurance provider and go, hey, this has happened, and hope, can you please help me with this? And can I tell you a few stories about the insurance, just because I think it would be really useful? So we onboarded a customer for Cloud Contracts a few days ago, and I was going through the master service agreement, building it with him, and we got to the insurance levels, and I said, okay, well, what insurance do you carry for professional indemnity, PI insurance, right? And he said, oh, I don't know. Let me have a little look. And we went through professional indemnity, PI, we went through products and public liability, We went through employer's liability and cyber insurance, right? So I had to get these 4 things from him. These are kind of the fundamental basis of doing business in the UK. And he looked and he said, oh, I only have £1 million of cover for product and public liability. And he had the 10 million for employer's liability. By the way, just so you know, the minimum is 5 million, which you have to have by law. So that was fine. But I was like, okay, but where's your professional indemnity? What's professional indemnity? I said, well, that covers you for if you directly cause an issue and you need to go claim on it. That's what that does. Oh, he said, is that public and product liability? I said, no, that's a whole different thing. That's about products. That's if something blows up, like you have like a laptop and it blows up in someone's face, that's going to cover you. That's not for your services, like the general services. And he realized at that moment he had no professional indemnity insurance in place in his business that he's been running for 20 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So that was a big moment.
For all directors.
That was a huge moment. That was a huge moment. So he's now gone and got the insurance, which is fantastic. He didn't have any cyber insurance. That's a really important thing as well. And when I've onboarded other clients, they've had something like £250,000 of cyber insurance. It's not enough. It's just not enough. These guys are carrying way more risk than 250,000, even if they're doing only £20,000 contract deals.
Yeah.
It's not the value of a contract. That means that's how much risk you carry. It's the risk. It's like the thing that goes wrong that can affect the customer and then things start exploding.
And the teams that they bring in, incident response teams, communication teams, lawyers, etc.
Exactly. So just that little moment that I had with him completely changed his risk profile. It made him like he was sleeping at night because he had no idea that this is the blind side, right?
Yeah. But you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly. Which ignorance is bliss, right? Yeah. We know that.
Yeah.
Until something bites you in the bum and then you're like, why didn't anyone tell me this? Why didn't my MSP community tell me this? Because people don't talk about it because they think they have everything they need. So I would say those 2 are the kind of fundamental layers of what you need to kind of manage. And then now it's like looking at compliance and ISO and like, are you doing the right things? Are you putting things in place? It's more process orientated, which is not my bag, obviously. That's more, the technical side of things and how you govern the structure of your internal businesses. But those are the 3 fundamental layers. Yeah. Yeah.
So people that are thinking today, which is what we started off with, well, we just stand on good service. We don't need this. We've had customers for 20 years.
I love that one.
Why do we now need this?
Yeah.
I think hopefully
nothing's ever happened.
They're thinking, actually, I'm at risk here.
And I say to them, Darren, when you go and sell cyber to a customer, and that customer's never had a cyber incident, how do you sell it? How do you sell something that you know they're going to need, even if they've never had that risk? And you said it because it's the what if scenario.
Yeah.
And they know this because they're selling it with the what if scenario. And I'm selling legal with the what if scenario. I'm trying to get them to see it.
Well, cyber's changed. The way that I would sell it back in the day would be it's almost not a what if, it's a when. Yeah. Because it will happen. Yeah. It's just, do you have the right structure, the right processes, the right incident response plan to deal with that? Because it is going to happen.
And the first thing people look at is the legal contract. First thing, where am I covered? Where am I managing my risk? Have I excluded this? Oh, thank God. I can at least go to the table knowing I've got that provision. And insurance will also recommend or actually require you to have certain wording in your contracts. And if you don't, they won't insure you either.
Yeah.
Because they don't want you having huge risk by not having good contract processes. So now there's like a lot of pressure.
And you've also got the fact that the vendors that you're buying these tools off will have it in their contracts.
Totally. And they'll be excluding everything.
Yeah.
They'll be, as much as they can, they'll be like, not our responsibility. So then if they're saying that and the MSPs are reselling their products, then someone's going to have the finger pointed at them, and it's going to go to the middleman because there's no other way. So it's really that's what I'm saying. Like it's a perfect storm happening at the moment, which is why this is not a conversation about the nice thing to have. This is an absolutely critical conversation to keep and safeguard your business.
So if someone's sat there now thinking, well, I was on the story of my services are good, so we stand by it.
Yeah.
You've now convinced me I need to do something. What's the pathway? Because if they've got customers that have been with them 20 years, and they now all of a sudden turn up and go, well, can you sign this for me?
Yeah, and a very formalized contract that has a lot of words in it that, with covering all their services, that's like a 60-page old contract. That's a big culture shock. And actually I can see the struggle that the MSPs go through with that, because, they've had that good relationship and all of a sudden they're like, you don't want the customer to go, what's going on? Are you doing something? Is there, have I got more risk?
Yeah, there must be a reason for this.
Yeah. So the way I advocate for it is I always say to my MSPs, we've actually done this. We've put sales letters together, which advocates the reasons why they need the contracts in place, because I have a lot of customers who've had absolutely nothing for 20 odd plus years, right? And the way we do it is a few things. We say, number one, there's more guidelines, there's more guidance, there's more, you're required as the customer to have these contract terms in place through the NCSC guidelines, and we're complying with those guidelines. There's also the Cyber Resilience Bill that is advocating for us to have these terms in place. So it's looking like you're being proactive in being more of a compliance as a service kind of MSP. The other one is that we wanted to have some language in order to ascertain your rights, our rights, that we are, if something happens, we both know where, how the situation should unfold. So, those 2 points alone are quite big selling points, especially the first one, when you can say, we've taken some advice on it. We understand you need this protection. This is what's coming down the road. We're getting more on the regulation side. We need to be seen to be complying, and this is how we want to be complying, and these are the terms. And sometimes we do like a very quick FAQ, which shows them the high level points of the contract. So to give them some comfort that we're not hiding behind something, we just go, these are the top line issues of the contract. Obviously take your own legal advice. We are only telling you, we want to tell you, but we're telling you the main things. And then at least then people feel rested assured that they can sign it.
Great. You mentioned that beautiful word a minute ago, AI.
Yes.
Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's going crazy over it.
Yeah.
I did a video not long ago where I basically said I was fed up of hearing about it.
But now you're going to talk about it.
But now let's talk about it, because I think it's got some relevance here.
Yeah.
Because I'm, obviously in an MSP world, a lot of people are looking at now. One, what the marketing says AI, but actually is it AI or is it a workflow?
Yep.
And actually is it AI? But they're looking a lot at the minute about how can I make money out of this service? If we're going to do some sort of AI strategy in the business for the customers, then it has to have some money return. We've also got Microsoft in June changing their licensing models and pushing their Copilot a lot more, and they've changed the pricing and structure of it to do that.
Yeah.
What should the MSP be thinking about when they're going, well, we're just going to turn this Copilot on for them?
Yeah. So there's obviously a lot of talk about managed intelligence providers being the new MSP.
Yeah.
Okay. Which we might know who coined that.
Yeah. MIPs.
MIPs, exactly. Not MIBs though, unfortunately. And that comes with more pressure on the MSP to build agents with the use of Copilot and those workflows and agentic work essentially. And there's a lot of help out there right now to help them build it and how to commercialize it, because that's really the biggest part is, do you have a subscription with it? Do you build it in the customer's tenant? Do you build it in your own tenant, deploy it? How do you rinse and repeat?
What service are you going to wrap around it?
What service are you going to wrap around it? So the commercial models, obviously, I'll leave that for people who know that world much more than I do. But from the legal perspective, the intellectual property is where my attention goes to, because when you're building anything intellectual property wise, and that's, if you're building your own agents through, with Copilot, but you're building your own sort of offering around that, that is your intellectual property. It doesn't have to be a high tech spec kind of thing to be intellectual property. And when you are building it, you want to protect the intellectual property so that it's an asset in your business. And the reason that is because if you go to exit or want investment later, that asset can command 10 times the multiples of the EBIT that goes with that asset. So you want to ring fence from a legal position. This is your intellectual property. No one else owns it. And the reason I say it is because if they've got terms and conditions with their customers that essentially says intellectual property is yours, customer, and the buyer later wants to buy that MSP and says, you don't own any IP, you've given it all away. And the MSP had no idea their contracts gave it all away.
Yeah. So it might be an old contract that says your data is yours.
Yeah. All of the stuff
your
that we
systems
do.
are yours, we just manage it for you.
I mean, that's a big day for the MSP at that exit position going, what the hell? You know, I did all this and I don't effectively own it. And then the other issue is if you do give it away, you can't go and rinse and repeat this because you don't actually own the intellectual property to then, you've given it to somebody else. It's their intellectual property that you're now copying and giving to somebody else. You're breaching people's intellectual property, which you will have a big, what we call indemnity in the contract. So you would have to pay the money for that. So there's a lot around intellectual property that they need to be thinking about. And honestly, they're better off just getting a bit of advice around it, depending on how they're structuring their commercial offering. But their terms and conditions 100% needs to say, this is our intellectual property. This is and you have a restrictive license to use it. You know, we get all the data that's not your customer data, that's specific in that, you know, and the use of the platform, that kind of thing.
Well, what about any sort of governance on you being liable for them putting in private data?
Yeah, you have to be really careful of what you're using, how the customer's using it, what data's going into it, and where that data is being processed. Copilot is, I mean, a lot of people are quite safe with Copilot, the way that it's structured, the security around Copilot as well. But if they're using or deploying any other kind of AI tools, they need to figure out, well, where is that personal data going? Where is it being resided? What are the complications with that?
Yeah, because people are even starting to build middleware products because the AI developer tools have meant you don't even need to be a developer.
Yeah, you don't.
So they're building all these middleware products and deploying them into customers when they don't actually know anything around governance and security coding or anything like that. They're just taking the language model at its word that product is safe.
And they have to do the due diligence around what they're using. And the due diligence is just an investigation into asking questions of the provider of that AI tool, whatever it might be. Where does the data reside? Where does the data reside? How is the data processed? Where does all the data, is it trained? Is all the data trained? How do they manage breach of confidentiality? Where does the intellectual property go? Does that get used by the trained models so it doesn't become the intellectual property of that customer anymore? And then they have to tell and advocate that to the customer. So they have to understand this stuff. It's a big part of it.
Yeah, that's massive, absolutely massive.
Also, just another point I think might be useful on this, like AI, now that they're deploying it, the MSPs or MIPs, they're deploying the AI. A lot of customers are coming to them and saying, what does this mean for me? Do I need an AI acceptable use policy, like to help the people in my team know how to use this effectively? What do I need to have that governance in my business too?
Yeah. Does it change my contracts?
Does it change my contract? Exactly. In my employment contracts or my employment policies. And the answer is 100% it does. But a lot of MSPs shy away from this conversation because they're like, talk to your lawyers, but they're like, but you're the tech expert. You need to tell me what I need to know here. So for example, in our platform, we have a resell model where we build all these AI policies that they can just resell to their customers. We maintain it all the time. So they're effectively exactly what lawyers would be providing. And they can offer that as a value add because it's going to be demanded of them in the next 12 to 18 months, more and more and more. And that's a great value add. But that's something where, again, they can have that compliance and they can be they can be helped with that journey, but they just need to take the steps to do it.
Yeah, so it's going to help them with their business, but also help their customers.
Exactly, which is the value add. Yeah.
So we talked a bit about AI in employment contracts, but you look at way more than that in employment contracts. So most people are probably weak in that area because they just think, well, if I employ the right people, I don't need to worry about that.
Yeah. So the biggest thing in employment contracts, especially if you're an MSP, MIP, evolving to development of some sort of intellectual property in your business. And the thing they always miss is that your employment contracts have to say where the intellectual property goes if an employee creates intellectual property whilst they are working for you. And there's kind of twofold issues with this. We have this notion at law called waiving moral rights, okay? I won't bore you with the detail, but that definitely needs to be in your contract, that the employee waives their moral rights. That means that they can't come back to you and say, I built that, even if you paid me a salary, that's my intellectual property and I own it. Okay, so there's that first rung of the ladder that they absolutely
because law would say they do.
They could do, yeah. It's a bit black. It's not black and white, but it's important that people just have that language in there to avoid any statute law or case law coming into play. The second thing is what we call a power of attorney, and what that means is we have a clause in our employment contracts that states that in the event that the MSP needs to enforce the intellectual property assignment, means it just assigning. So let's just say by virtue of law, the employee can claim that intellectual property for themselves. The power of attorney stops them immediately because it says that you can sign a document on behalf of the employee which transfers any intellectual property they might hold with the law back into the MSP. And that's called a power of attorney language. And these two clauses fit into a section in your employment contract called intellectual property. The difference with the power of attorney and why a lot of MSPs don't like it is because it requires the whole contract to be a deed, which actually just means that a witness has to sign as well as the employee and as well as the employer. So you have two witnesses signing the contract because effectively you're asking for permission to sign on behalf of somebody's name, hence why you need the witnesses in there.
Yeah.
Most employment contracts, if they buy it off Peninsula or an HR provider, will never have that power of attorney language.
Because it makes the whole thing way more structured.
Yeah, and because most businesses out there don't really care about intellectual property, right? But we're in the tech space. We care about intellectual property. And especially if you're moving into MIP, you're going to care about intellectual property. So make sure that your employment contracts have those two clauses. Again, our platform does that, so you don't have to think about it. It's already there. But just have those two clauses in there. And if you're using Peninsula or anyone, go to them and say, I want the power of attorney language in my employment contracts so that I can enforce my intellectual property.
Yeah, and when you think of where an MSP is going, or where we think they're going, from a service IT response business to actually doing more business consulting, business transformations, AI, etc., then there's going to be a lot more intellectual property built on that journey. Again,
it's not necessarily just development. You're right. It's also consulting. It's the presentations that you put together. It's the processes that you put together. That's still intellectual property. So all of that's really critical to get right in your employment contracts, and no one really knows about it. So I just thought that's a nice little thing to share with the community to just go check. I know it's a bit of a headache that everyone has to sign, but rather have a little bit of a headache in the early stages of when an employee is being onboarded, then have a headache when they're exiting and they don't care and they are not going to do anything.
Yeah, they're not your friend.
And they're not going to sign anything. Do it at the start.
Yeah. So another thing I wanted to touch on when we're thinking about contracts, because for me, that's a big part of your asset. That's a big part of what you're building in your business. Yes. So there's two angles. There's one when you're selling this asset at some point. Yep. Mm-hmm. And there's also the fact that you may want to, at some point in the journey, buy an asset. You might want to buy a smaller MSP or a competitive MSP to merge that into your business. Mm-hmm. What should we be looking for when we're thinking about contracts?
Yeah, so let's take the selling aspect. You're ready to sell, or even get investment, actually. It doesn't have to be a sell opportunity.
Yeah, because they're going to value the asset at that point.
Exactly, they're going to value the asset. So the number one thing a seller will be looking for is, have you protected this business? Because if you think about it, let's go back to that original conversation we had about the MSP who knows their customers like the back of their hand. They've got great relationships, no contracts in place. They trust them.
We're all friends.
Yeah, they're all friends. Like everyone's great, That's fine. But imagine someone brand new stepping into your shoes while you're going off on a nice holiday because you've exited. They don't have friendships with these clients. They don't have relationships like you do. So if those clients turn on them, what do they have to protect the business? And the number one thing they look at is contracts, because contracts will protect the business no matter if the business owner has left and someone else has replaced him or her. And that's what we need to protect. So contracts. Now, in the contracts, there needs to be certain things in there that they're going to be looking for. That limit of liability is really critical. That's managing your risk as a section. It's literally called limit of liability. In your contracts, I'll be looking for what I call the caps. So the amount that you'll go to, the maximum.
What are you on the hook for?
What you're on the hook for. They'll look for the exclusions, what you're never going to be on the hook for, things like loss of profits, loss of revenue if that happens. Again, we talked about that membership site, supporting a membership site that goes down, £1 million of profit lost. Sorry, mate, it's in the contract. You've already said, yes, I don't have to pay you for that. They're going to look at termination and term. So have you locked them in for 12 months recurring revenue? You know, how easy is it for them to get out of the contract? Have you given them a right to terminate 30 days at any point, or is it 90 days before the end of the term or the renewal term? Because recurring revenue adds valuation. Yep. They'll look at intellectual property if you're then trying to get value against any intellectual property that you've put into the business. So again, looking ahead, the roadmap of an MSP now, is it building things, whether it's processes, business processes, intellectual property, whatever it might be? Have you ring-fenced that intellectual property from both the employment side, like we just discussed, or the contract side as well with the customer? What else will they look at? I'm just trying to think. I mean, those are the big ones. Assignment rights and all these things are slightly more legal ones that they don't have to worry. These are the sort of everyday issues.
Yeah.
So they are going to be worried about that. They're going to look at it. And the thing is, you can, of course, there will be people that will buy you without contracts, 100%. But they might have chipped off £1 million out of the valuation because of it.
Yeah.
So for just a small cost, getting your contracts right and just sending it to your clients to sign off, is it worth £1 million to you, or whatever it could be? You know, that's the question you've got to ask yourself. Or are you okay having them chip off that price because you didn't want to upset the customer?
Yeah, and I would say even if you've got a situation where you say, I don't need this to be an asset at the end, or I'm never going to sell it, I'm going to pass it on to the people or pass it on to family, etc. Run the business like you're going to sell it.
Yeah, but you're also giving them a risky business.
You're passing it on.
You're passing it on. So that's not necessarily a gift. That's sometimes a curse, because if you're giving something that has so much risk in it and something has gone wrong, they're going to pay for it whilst you're off on a lovely sunny holiday.
And your situation can change.
Yeah.
You know, I know a business owner that was one of our customers that sold last year. He was never going to sell that business. He was going to give it to the team. Okay. Didn't need the asset, but his sister unfortunately became terminally ill. And that journey made him change what he wanted out of the rest of his life, and he sold the business. But if he wouldn't have been running the business ready to sell, it would have not been worth that value.
Exactly. Ready to sell, passing it on, whether it's MBO, whether it's management buyout, or whether it's anything like that. You have to protect the asset. If you're not protecting the asset and something goes wrong after you've left, somebody else is going to pick that up. And people who are smart will be like, what risk am I entering into by going into your footsteps here? So, and people are quite astute with that, to be honest.
Yeah. And then purchasing will be the same thing, but the other way around.
The other way around. So if you're purchasing, you'll be looking for those contracts. Again, you will be starting to see things from the other side of the fence, which is, now I have to step into this person's shoes who I don't really know. I don't know what their risk profile is. I don't know how, mature they are on their compliance and legal staff. So they're going to be asking questions. Do you have contracts? What's your contract process? How do you, what insurance do you carry? How have you had any claims? How have you dealt with the claims? These are the things that a purchaser of an MSP should be asking. Looking at the risk profile. So let's go back to that. So look at the contracts, make sure those things I just highlighted are in there.
And the added services as well.
The added services. So in your contracts, you'll have hopefully lawyers anyway help you with this. And if not, just get somebody to give you like what we call a due diligence sheet. It's got like headers of what should be in the contracts and helps you to kind of figure out what you need to look at. But term, the recurring revenue, they need to understand, are they locked in? Can they get out easy?
Yeah, what's the notice term?
Yeah, because that's going to be a valuation issue. Then they're going to look at liability. Have they effectively protected the business or not? bottom line. Then they're going to look at your what we call assignment rights. And these are whether you can easily transfer the contract to a new buyer. Okay, they're normally found right at the end of the contract. It's called assignment. It's literally called assignment. Again, it's very legal, but you do need to pay attention to that because you need to step into the shoes of that business and manage that contract.
And you don't want the contract to be voided.
Exactly. So those are the main ones. And then you need to look at their insurance levels, like we've already covered. You need to look at their claims. You then need to look at their services, and then you need to sort of understand their business processes and operations. And from the sales side, that's how you get the multiples. The more you can show that you're achieving all these things, the more the multiple is going to go up, because it's a lift and shift exercise rather than I need to clean up exercise.
Yeah, and the risk has gone lower.
Yeah. So those are the kind of the big angles on whatever side of the fence you sit on.
Amazing. Ultimately, we've got services and contracts, and we want to get paid for it. That's the whole nuts and bolts to it. We want to make sure that we're selling the right services. We've got the right contracts to make sure we get paid for it at the end.
Yes.
So we do some structures around debtors processes inside the PSA.
Mm-hmm.
Quite a high topic for us. Mm-hmm. I'd say it's in our top 5 because typically people aren't managing the debtors process enough.
Yeah.
So without them knowing it can get to a high ticket value before they even start chasing for it. And in most cases, when you ask, you get paid.
Yeah.
So if you don't ask early enough, that number can increase so dramatically.
And then you've got a cash flow issue.
And you've got cash flow issues because of that. Do you see that linking up with what you do?
Yeah, this is a brilliant question. So for me, I see this all the time, unfortunately, and I think there's definitely something I need to kind of explore a bit more so that MSPs are aware of it. But payment issues, so obviously the contracts will specify when payment is owed, there'll be interest rates applied if they're overdue, blah, blah, blah. These are standard. But there's also, and there should be in every single MSP contract, the ability to terminate or suspend the services in the event of failure to pay within a certain time frame after they've stopped paying, okay? Because you want to action something that can trigger them to be like, I've got to pay attention, right?
Or you're also getting third-party costs.
Well, we'll talk about that in a second because obviously you've got NCE costs there. Yeah. So you absolutely need to have that right to terminate, suspend. And again, it might be a warning sign, a shot across the barrel to say, look, we're going to turn you off in a week's time because you failed to pay. And you've got to give them consistent warnings about it. So you can't just turn them off, right? You've got to be consistently emailing them every single day going, you've got 5 days, 4 days, 3 days, whatever it might be. But you need that right in the contract. What I say to my clients all the time is, it's great to have that right. They don't want to trigger it, obviously. I can understand why. That's a really last minute issue. But from an internal business process, as you've sort of said, they need an internal red flag system. If the client has consistently failed to pay many months in a row, can you do a credit score? Can you look at, see if there's any issues going on? And I'll tell you why this is so important. Any flags? Because if they, and again, NCE, all that kind of stuff, we know they're holding the liability, right? These MSPs are holding the liability for that. And they need to have the right to call in all the amounts, even if it's month to month, all the amounts that is owed for the rest of the term if this happens. But if they don't do that internal process, they don't talk to the customer, they don't trigger a right, and the customer now goes into administration, the problem is, and this is so critical to hear, MSPs are considered an essential supplier of services under the Insolvency Act, like gas and electricity. And that means they cannot turn off that customer, no matter what. And they may only get, if they're lucky, a penny in the pound for that service. So now they've got their distributor to pay or Microsoft to pay, and they don't even know if they're going to get that money back. If they're holding £10,000 of their licenses every month for that client, because it's a bigger client, they're going to have to pay it and they're not going to get that money back. What does that mean? Okay.
Yep.
So those internal processes are so critical because once that administrator has been appointed, it's kind of game over. There are things that they can do, obviously. They can apply to be the creditor, first in line or wherever it might be. They're not going to be first in line, but they can apply for things. They can apply to switch off after a reasonable time. But it's so difficult at that point to just walk away. So we had this case scenario quite recently. I'll just share a story.
Yeah.
And we literally just onboarded a customer. They'd used our contract, great with the customer. They signed it. And they were notified by an employee that the employee wasn't getting paid, like all the employees weren't paid that day. And they found out through the grapevine that they were about to go into administration. They weren't quite at administration, they're about to go into administration. Luckily, they had the terms and conditions in place that they could terminate, suspend it straight away. But they were like, what do I do? They literally are going to talk to the administrator the next day. And they're like, I've got a day to do something. Obviously, we're not insolvency practitioners, but I called my network of lawyers. I got somebody involved. They were able to terminate, suspend the services straight away before the administrators got called. And so just things like that helped the MSP to manage that. That was their biggest client as well. So these things, go back to our original conversation about, doing handshakes, we know our mates, things can go wrong.
Yeah.
Our mates may not tell us.
And once they go into administration, it's a whole different ballgame.
That's it.
To deal with.
It's really hard. It's really hard. They're not forever committed to it, but it's, it can wipe quite a bit of your profitability.
Yeah, I had a case not long ago with one of our clients that I heard about that they got into administration and they had to keep certain services live because they couldn't force deletion of data.
Yeah.
So they can't just take all the licenses in 365 and turn them off because it would delete all the data.
Exactly.
So they have to keep that platform active for so long.
Exactly.
And then the administrators put you to the bottom of the list.
Exactly.
So you've got all the costs.
Yeah, and all the risk.
Yeah. So Kim, this was a great conversation. I'm sure people out there listening to this have got a lot from this, but let's think about our key takeaways. Mm-hmm. What's your number one key takeaway from this conversation?
Get your contract sorted, basically.
As simple as that.
Simple as that. In all seriousness, get the right kind of contract built for you. It's going to protect your business from a bad valuation. It's going to protect your business from risk as much as it can. And it's your first layer of defense. So that, for me, is the biggest key takeaway.
Great. I think for me, you've touched on a really good part on the employment contract side and how MSPs are evolving and changing, and there's going to be more IP being built inside these MSPs. Yeah. And you need to make sure that your employment contracts are meaning that IP stays with you as a business, as an asset, and doesn't go with someone that's leaving the door.
Yeah, 100%. So important, and no one really knows about it.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing that no one's even thinking about. No. They've got people that's been working for a long time, and they're not reassessing actually this business is changing.
Exactly.
So Kim, people will have loved what we've talked about here. If they want to go into any more detail with you, I'm sure you'll answer some questions for them.
Yeah.
Where would they make contact with you?
I think the easiest one is LinkedIn. And if you just drop me a DM with the words contract, I can set up a call. Otherwise, it's kim@law365.co.
We talked a lot about agreements and contracts and M&A here. The last podcast that we did with Daniel Welling from MSP Finance talked a lot about M&As, assessing the understanding of how much your business is actually worth, going into how much contracts makes a difference on multiples, etc. So if that topic really resonates with you, go and find the Daniel Welling podcast.